Hi, my name is Evan Orleck-Jetter. I am a English major and sociology minor at the University of Vermont, and I'm going to be giving a 10-minute presentation on No Place to Hide by Glenn Greenwald, which basically tells the story of how Glenn Greenwald, who is an investigative journalist, came into contact with the infamous Edward Snowden and met with him, and how the files on the NSA came to light in that whole process. And so first I'm going to give a summary of the chapters. Chapter 1, we learn about how Snowden initially tried to get into contact with Greenwald using this code name, but Greenwald didn't really pay much attention because he was working on a lot of other projects and didn't know if it was really going to amount to anything. But then one of his other colleagues said that she'd been in contact with this person who said he had really revealing documents about the U.S. government and the NSA, and so they arranged to meet in Hong Kong. And in Hong Kong, they meet and they have to take all these very strange precautions, and it's ironic because Snowden is actually staying at this very expensive, well-known hotel, and yet he has to be very careful about his interactions with others. For example, when they meet him, the only way they know that it's him is that he's carrying like a Rubik's Cube, which is really interesting and kind of funny. And then they provide more background on Snowden. And yeah, so that's the first two chapters, basically, giving some background information. The book chapters are chapter 3 and 4. Chapter 3 is called Collect It All. And this details like more about the NSA, what's in these documents that Snowden released. And basically, what was really interesting and surprising for a lot of people is that the NSA does not just collect data on terrorists, but on a lot of other countries, including our close allies, and on the average American citizen, who might not even be connected in any way to a terrorist attack. So a lot of the data also came pretty recently, from 2011, 2012, even 2013. And then Greenwald goes on to describe some of the programs that were found and contained in these documents, which were really hard for him to sort through. And he said sometimes it took 2-3 readings to even get what was the main idea in these documents, because they were very well coded and very confusing. But basically, the Boundless Informant program is very interesting. I have a quote on page 92 about it. So the Boundless Informant program showed that the NSA counts all the telephone calls and emails collected every day from around the world with mathematical exactitude. Repeatedly, NSA officials had claimed they were incapable of providing specific numbers, exactly the data that the Boundless Informant program was constructed to assemble. This is really interesting and was really damaging for the NSA's reputation, and this basically shows them collecting a lot of metadata. And so, for example, they collect all of these phone calls that the average American citizen could be making. They don't know the exact content of the phone calls, but they do know who's calling who, what time, how long, and information like that, which can be very damaging and is pretty disturbing. So then, notes. On page 94, another important quote from the 3rd chapter is that, quote, the U.S. government had built a system that has at its goal the complete elimination of electronic privacy worldwide. And that's really not an exaggeration, and is really terrifying to think about. And it was just a quote that really resonated with me. And then Greenwald discusses Keith B. Alexander, who took over the NSA and is especially controversial because he really pushed the button and really made it his goal to eliminate the electronic privacy, and definitely broke a lot of the laws surrounding privacy in this country. And then we learned that the NSA partners with a lot of private corporations like AT&T, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, which is really shocking. And a lot of these companies claim, or their representatives like Mark Zuckerberg claim, like, if people shouldn't be posting all this stuff about themselves. Like, if you post it, like, that's your responsibility. Yet they have like precautions and want their own privacy against government surveillance. So it's pretty ironic, and it's pretty hypocritical. So then on to chapter 4, which is called The Harm of Surveillance. I found this an especially interesting chapter because it kind of talks about the psychological effects of having your privacy taken away. And we all desire privacy, and that's really true. It's like something like essential to ourselves. And on page 173, Glenn says, privacy is essential to human freedom and happiness for reasons that are rarely discussed but instinctively understood by most people, as evidenced by the lengths to which they go to protect their own. To begin with, people radically change their behavior when they know they are being watched. And that really summarizes like the main ideas of this chapter, and how there's like multiple examples, and he cites multiple studies, including one that I have this on page 179. But it was called The Chilling Effects of Surveillance. Sought to assess whether being watched had an impact on the expression of controversial political opinions. So the participants in the study were placed under varying levels of surveillance. And so one group was asked, do you believe marijuana should be legalized? But then they were told that their answer would be given to the police for training purposes. And then the other group was told not told that. So basically, for the people that were told that their response would be handed to the police, 44% said that they supported marijuana legalization, and the other group, 77%. So that just goes to show how real this is, that when you think you're being watched or monitored, you will change your behavior and change your answer because you don't want to get in trouble, basically. And so he cites a lot of studies like that and how the human condition has changed. And he, even in the first or second chapter, when he describes his interaction with Snowden and how when the cameras were turned on, their interaction was already awkward, but once they were being filmed, they both became more uncomfortable, more formal, because the idea of being watched, it really does change how you feel, how you react to certain situations. So then in chapter 5, it was very interesting. Greenwald discusses the role of the media in kind of enforcing the government's will, which is surprising because the media historically has been known to kind of push against the government, push boundaries. But Greenwald talks about how when he, came out with this information and helped Snowden, all these publications, even ones like the New York Times, which are considered like pretty liberal, kind of went on this smear campaign against him, tried to really damage his career. They didn't even refer to him as a journalist. Instead, they called him like a blogger or an activist, kind of trying to take away the importance of what he was doing. And he discussed that this has not always been the case, because there was one journalist who gave this speech about he was a correspondent in Vietnam, and he'd been really recognized because the government threatened him, and said that it would take away his job if he continued to show these controversial images and to report. And he didn't give in to it, and he had an incredible career because of it. But Greenwald is saying, in this day and time, trying to go against the government, you will not be rewarded for your actions, and how that's kind of related to the fall of journalism in this country. So finally, what I liked and didn't like about this book. First, what I really liked The intro that Greenwald provides about Snowden and how they met, and I thought that was really interesting and like well written and kind of like hooks the reader. And I thought that he did a pretty good job of breaking down the NSA, the documents Snowden had released, and how they monitor people, even though it is still pretty hard to comprehend. I think he did a good job of breaking that down. The things that I didn't like, for starters, and this has come up in a lot of the books we've read, but I feel especially in this case, he doesn't really provide any solutions to this problem. He doesn't, because you can't just like get rid of, in my opinion, all surveillance. It's not an easy solution, and he's very pessimistic and talking about how corrupt it is, but he really doesn't give any idea of how we can even begin to change this system. So it kind of leaves the reader feeling a bit hopeless, and so I think that's problematic. And another thing that he didn't really click for me was, and I've seen this in a few reviews of the book, is that he really doesn't credit any of the other people that helped bring this information to light. He kind of puts himself front and center of this story, which I find a bit egotistical, and yeah, I didn't really like that about the book, and that was one of the complaints I had. It didn't really paint the author in a great light because of that, and so I think there were other people that should have been included in the story. Other than that, I enjoyed reading the book. I feel like it's a really important book to read, and it's about a subject that I didn't really have much background on. So, yep, that is all.